Welcome to Candybar Antlerboy, a series where I, Mike Rapin, discuss the Netflix original series Sweet Tooth with the one and only IRCB regular, Danny.
Hey everyone.
Every week, we'll be discussing one episode of the TV series and chatting about the comic of the same name by Jeff Lemire, originally published by Vertigo Comics. Now, let's get into the show. We're talking episode 13 of the show, season 2, episode 5, called What It Takes, 51 minutes, 9 seconds. Spoilers for episode 13 of Sweet Tooth. You have been warned. Before I get into the summary, Danny, how are you feeling going into this episode? The 5th episode of the season. We're 3 away from ending this whole deal.
Yeah, I'm a little I'm a little out of sorts with the show at this point because I don't know if we're going to be able to get to everything that I want in 4 episodes.
Okay.
But I think we can talk about it. Also, I don't know how happy the ending's going to be for this show
Yeah.
after watching this one.
Yeah.
Uh but let's get into it.
Yeah, man. So I guess go through a quick summary once again. Warning for spoilers: if you haven't watched this, hit pause, go watch the episode, and then come on back. But in this episode, we see a lot of things. Jep is hoofing it to the zoo, thinking back on his worst memory, finding out what happened to his wife and kid, uh, and figuring out that all the work that he's been doing has been for naught, which was devastating. We find out that Sing's cure is no longer possible, maybe question mark. I don't know. There's a lot of unknowns there. Abbott gives a little presentation about how he's going to save humanity, starting with Singh talking about the cure and moving on to Abbott pitching this walled off utopia that supposedly exists but needs workers. All of the warlords from across the world, or at least this sector, have been gathered together, and one of the warlords, Mrs. Zhang, decides that she and Abbott can group together and go it alone and eliminates the other warlords in the end. Talk about a wild ending to an episode. But Bear runs into an old pal from the animal army who's looking to storm the zoo because all threads are coming together at once. Wendy and the kids sneak free from their cell, but lose Gus in the fray when he darts away to save the turtle kid, ultimately ending up in the middle of Abbott's presentation. Before Gus is caught, though, Johnny lets Gus get away where he's met by Jep, who has been captured. This episode ends on planes flying overhead and all of the threads intermingling as we wait for what comes next. Danny, this episode, I loved it and hated it all at once because I just wanted them to get to where this I feel like the last 2 episodes have been building towards, and finally we got there. My first question is, how is it possible that Jep got to the zoo before Amy in a plane? Can you explain that to me?
Uh here's what I'm thinking, and this is what my head canon. I don't think the airplanes went straight to the zoo. I think they went to pick up some of the like I don't know, do something airplane stuff before.
Mm, sure,
So I will say this as you were recapping the episode, and I watched this one over the weekend, like a couple days before recording.
sure.
I was checking my notes because I was like, did I put the wrong notes on the episode? Because nothing that you were talking about sounded familiar. But it is, though, you are right. Don't look. I checked, that's why I checked my
Oh,
phone. No,
okay,
you
okay.
you are correct. I was just like, the problem is that prior to a little inside baseball for the listeners, prior to recording, I watched the next one to also get ready.
Oh,
So
okay,
that was
right.
commingled in my head. So I was like, what is Mike talking about? But yeah, we are
Yeah.
a-okay. But man, talk about starting on a sad note with Jep's backstory, and
Oh my god.
the payoff was not great. And that's part of the things that we're adding up to, like, is this story gonna have a happy ending, or any can it even have a happy ending at all? And that was one
Well,
of the things that told me no.
that's the thing. I think you might need to reframe that thought from will everybody have a happy
Mhm.
ending or not? And I'm very confident that the answer is no, right? This season I think I've talked a little bit about how things have started to really stray from the comic and how that's fine. But I think that we're starting to see some of that swing back around.
Yeah.
I'm starting to recognize more of the story beats that I was preparing myself for, such as the death of Jep's family,
Yeah.
um things like that. So like I like some of the twists and turns that this season has taken in order to get us to those beats that showed up a little bit more aggressively, I guess, in the story or the original comic. So seeing stuff like Jep, I mean, like, is are things going to end up happy. I mean, all signs are pointing to no for him. But maybe for other people,
Yeah.
we'll see. Like this new character Bear, who I still can't figure out what she's doing, but she's definitely doing it. I don't know. So
Yeah,
it's an interesting thing.
I think Bear is the only one that knows, because not even the viewers, I don't know if the writers, I don't know who knows what Bear's up to.
Yeah.
Hopefully at least Bear knows, because every time we cut to a Bear scene, I'm like, why are we over here when there's like all this other stuff that we could be looking into, or when we could shave off 10 minutes to the of the episode, and not have it be an hour.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
so
But like for instance, I mean, not to harp on Bear here, but like, she runs into this old animal army friend that we saw from season 1, and I was like, why is any of this happening, right? Like, I think I know what this show is kind of doing. It's it's showing like that the youth who are working on, like the younger generation also care about this problem, but they care about it in a different way, right? Like the adults are trying to control everything, and the younger generation is trying to free everyone, to give everybody freedom. Which I guess I can understand. And I say that strangely, but it feels like every time we run into like a younger cast member trying to do something on their
mhm.
own, it feels so not thought out. And maybe that's me just being 30 something and being like, these damn kids
I
don't know
mean,
what they're doing. But
it could also be the writers being like 30, 40 somethings writing the show,
sure, right.
not knowing how to fully write a teenager, so
Hmm.
that
I
could be
totally
it.
agree, because that's the other thing is like, I also feel like the there's this weird cognitive dissonance thing of like the show very much wants you to take it seriously, and they're like, Sing's going through a crisis of faith, and I'm saying that in not in the matter of like religion, but of like, is life even worth anything, right? Like he's
Yeah,
going through this massive crisis, and then we'll turn to, oh, by the way, the kids are going to escape, and the last thing they're going to do to tie up this guy is they're going to blow this guy's face with skunk farts, and it's going to be really funny. And I'm like, who is this show for? Like, this show feels like so back and forth with its tone that I can't ever get a beat on it. And at this point, we're halfway through season 2. I'm like, can we just figure out how we're gonna treat
yeah.
this show? I don't know.
If
Did you
if
get
it's
that
for
same
kids,
feel?
they're gonna learn pain. And
Yeah.
if it's for adults, I mean, look, I thought the skunk thing was pretty funny too,
Oh, sure,
but yeah,
sure, sure, sure.
it definitely feels like tonally is kind of all over the place. Uh, which kind of going back to where the story takes, like, we get a confrontation between Abbott and Gus, and Gus isn't afraid anymore. Like he has seen past the fars that is Abbott,
Mhm,
uh,
mhm.
and uh, and then they escalate and they cut off a freaking antler, and I'm like,
Um
What the hell?"
Dude, I was broken in that moment. Like, when he grabbed Gus by the antlers and was just holding on to him, and he's like, "No, no, no, don't fight me. It's like you're a deer caught in a snare." And I was like,
Yeah,
this is so gross. I just want Abbott to not be around anymore, you know?
yeah,
Um, and not in like any kind of gross, like pervy way. It just like felt like icky in this situation, right?
yeah,
And then the fact that he ends up getting like Gus ends up getting his antler cut off, I was just like, this is too much. These kids, these guys need to get out of here. Something needs to happen. And I think that's what's going to happen next episode, fortunately. But we had a lot of build up in this episode to get there. So
mhm.
I was curious to know, Danny, what are your thoughts on like the three warlords that we met in this episode? And I keep calling them warlords. Maybe they're like supposed to be leaders
No,
of different groups, but they're warlords, right?
they are. That I wrote in my notes that this meeting was pretty wild because they're all just caricatures of people, of leaders. Like
Hmm.
every single one of them is like, if I had to pick where to live, I would just probably go live on my own, or I can see why I can understand why the people in the U-Haul just kind of like go on their own, because it is so much better than being part of any of them. Now, I think the show smartly cut that in half, as far as like people we have to worry about, because
Yeah.
we wouldn't have enough time to explore everyone, right? So we just have,
Right, right.
after Zing very unceremoniously just kind of takes out the rest and kind of does a an allegiance with Abbott. But that's also pretty interesting because they don't have all the information that we do, right?
Mhm,
Right before
mhm.
this, we realized that the cure is gone. Like whatever cure Singh had found, we know that it's not working anymore as the
Right,
audience. But
right.
they don't know that, and obviously Abbott doesn't know that because that's like Doctor Singh's last card he can play, really.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, so it'll be interesting to see how we know that they're not messing around. So if this Zinc person finds out that the cure's gone, like how are they going to react to towards Abbott? You know?
Oh, yeah. It's really interesting because I think, like, I know having read the comic and kind of knowing where the story goes, I know why the cure isn't viable anymore. I am very curious to see how they're gonna play this out in the show, because I feel like the show on the whole has been very science oriented, with the exception of a handful of dream sequences. You know, our a favorite thing that happened earlier in this season. Um, but I'm curious to see how they're going to like mesh things because I'll be honest with you, Danny, not spoiling anything, but it's not a very clear cut thing in the comic,
Yeah,
and you kind of have to like go with the flow. At least that's what I had to do when I read it. So, I'd be curious to see how they're going to handle it in the show because I feel like what you can get away in comic narrative, you can't as easily get away with in television narrative, even if they do have very similar vibes sometimes. So, um, yeah, it'll be interesting because now we're in this situation where Abbott has now made this deal with the devil in some ways, someone that clearly has like power and more power than he does and more
hmm,
everything. Like it
yeah,
seems that like Abbott's whole ordeal was we can inflict violence on people, and we have this beautiful propaganda machine that enables us to just recruit people. And Zhang has something else. Like she has the manpower, she has agriculture, she has the ability to like do all of these things that other people can't. That
and
especially like even the
and
last men can, you know?
and the audacity to wear an all white suit in the apocalypse.
Yeah. Right. Well, she's clearly like from Texas, right? Like she
Yeah, I
showed up
think
and like
so
there's the
for
big
sure.
horns on the front of her limousine. I was like,
Yep,
"Oh my
yep.
god."
That's why I said
How did
these
that
are
make you feel?
uh, not very good about living in Texas, but
Yeah.
that's why I said caricatures, all of them. That was really like just all the I will say all those little details. The show I do appreciate like how much of a effort they go to sometimes to make it seem like remember you are watching a TV show. Some of this stuff is going
Yeah.
to be weird. This is based on weird comic books because that's
Yeah.
what the Vertigo imprint was supposed to be. So I do appreciate all that stuff.
Right. I mean, I definitely thought that when we met I'm gonna call them like the spacefarers or whatever. The guy who was like, "Oh, the hybrids are Centauri. They're aliens that come from another." I was like, "Hell yeah!" Now we're back to the weird stuff. I totally am here for this.
Yeah,
I mean,
it,
R.I.P. those folks, but
it
still.
makes sense. It makes sense why those were taken off the board because that.
Yeah.
So
Totally. Um, I know we're kind of jumping all over the place here, but the Sings had a pretty tough line, at least through line for this episode. Like finding out that the cure was busted, his relationship with his wife basically going down the drain, him turning into this like stoic, broken person now that he has no future, or he thinks there's no future, or he's throwing himself into his work.
yeah,
Um, really kind of breaks my heart because I feel like he had hope and he had been building towards being like a more hopeful, positive person, and now he's back to square one, which I think we saw him in the earlier episodes when he was introduced, where he was kind of just this, I'm gonna do whatever needs to happen to get done. I don't have a heart anymore. Like I just need to save my wife. I just need to find this cure. Whereas I feel like what we've seen this season is some character development with him saying, "Oh, it's possible for me to have a heart and do this work." So yeah, I don't know. How are you feeling now after this episode where he definitely like hard elbowed like his wife out of the picture to say like you're not involved in how I'm doing things.
yeah. I think at this point he has done so much bad stuff. Like
Mhm.
he
Mhm.
feels his only redemption. Like his philosophy really now is that the means justify the end, right? Because overall, like he's gonna be able to save so many more people, including his wife, or at least that's what he thinks because of all the
Yeah.
atrocious things he's had to do. Right, he's had to side with Abbott. He's had to use hybrids to make this. All this stuff, and then having that one redeeming thing be taken away really
Mhm.
makes everything that he's done just for like at that point he was just doing bad stuff because it's like for the sake of it, right? Like there's no
Yeah.
redemption from that anymore. So that's I mean I that's got to be it's heartbreaking, yeah. And this actor's really good. Like
Oh my
every
god,
time they
right?
zoom in on his face, I'm like, oh, dude, you're going through it.
Yeah, it's incredible, like, acting, and I think the fact that I forget that there's a person that's, like, acting that's not actually living through this is a testament to how well this
Yeah,
guy's performing. Um, and, I think what's really interesting about all of that is, like, where is he gonna go from here now, right? Like, what's gonna happen now that he kind of knows or thinks that his cure is not possible? Like, is it like you said, he's just gonna be doing bad things for the sake of doing bad things, or is it gonna be something else? I don't know. I'm feeling not great about it, but I
yeah,
think things are going to definitely be shaken up in this next episode once the planes arrive because I think the cavalry's finally here, which is extremely interesting given what happened with the children this episode, right? So like Wendy stages this escape, they make this little plan, they have their home alone moment where they get to knock the guy around and bonk him on the head, and then he passes out. And I know I said I had some issues with like the tone of it, but regardless, like them moving forward is better than them just coming back to the cell and just being like, "Boy, it'd be great if we could get out of here," every single episode like we've seen.
right, right.
Um, so I'm glad that we got to see that, and I love that everything is kind of like falling apart and happening at the same time. Like good pacing for the show to see all of these things kind of happening at once. So now that they're out, like what's gonna happen when Amy shows up with these planes and these crazy like Mad Max era, but flying in planes, folks.
Yeah, no, I mean that was probably one of my favorite scenes. Just how I mean the guard is not the smartest, the sharpest tool in the shed, so I can see how the kids were able to like outsmart him. But I still
Yeah.
love the old gag of like the little turtle boy just ducks down behind them. They push him like that's
Yeah. Yeah.
very simple shenanigans, right? It doesn't have to get they don't have to get too intricate. And I
Yeah.
also kind of like to see them using their animal uh I was gonna say powers, but they're not
Yeah, yeah.
powers. Just like themselves, their full capabilities, right? The full
Yeah.
abilities for
Yeah.
as hybrids. Because at this point, we really had only seen Gus use like his enhanced smell and hearing and
Mhm.
stuff like
Mhm.
that. So Gus is the only one that had really been taking advantage of a lot of this stuff. But I feel like the kids meeting Gus gave him a little bit more confidence uh to start using to rely on themselves, not so much or at least in each other as well as a group. So
Yeah.
that was very nice.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think like them escaping, going for the big walk, and then Gus proving and continuing to prove his like, I'm the leader, I'm not above anybody, I will take care of this group if I have to. Like, I love that that all got to get showcased in this one little sequence of them running away, and then Gus ultimately building towards his bigger storyline of like running into this group, speaking, surprising everybody that a hybrid could speak. Like I think it was a very well written, like series of very complex, chaotic lines all coming
Yeah.
together at once.
e- every time a new character is surprised that they can talk, it just leads me to believe that they are so scared of these hybrids that no one's ever really like try to like they've never even tried to approach any of them.
Mhm,
It
mhm.
feels like because I think we can see that a lot of them could communicate with like just with people, like not just Gus, but I think so. I don't know. Sometimes it makes me think like, do we only as the audience understand fully what they're saying, and everybody else kind of doesn't?
Mm.
But I don't think that's the case. I think it's just pure ignorance on everyone else's
Yeah.
part. Which
Well,
I mean, I understand because if everyone told me that they're the cause of everybody dying, why would
yeah.
I even want to go? So,
Well,
but
there's also like a piece of this that I think is from a it's not really obvious, I think, in the story that like on one hand, like 98% of the population of North America has been wiped out, right?
Yeah.
On the other hand, these hybrids just show up and, like most children don't really speak until they're 2 or 3 years old, right? So like kids are being born since 9 years ago cuz Gus is like 9. Um and so as they're like Wendy and Gus being probably some of the oldest like hybrids. And so like kids that are born later, like they just never get a chance because after a couple of years of these hybrids being born, everyone's like, "Oh, they're just monsters. There's nothing to be
Yeah.
done with them." So I think it's like this combination of like people not giving them a chance as children and then just that idea perpetuating on, "Oh, I've never met a hybrid that could speak." Well, did you ever try talking to one that wasn't a baby? You know? Like
Yeah.
it's that I think is interesting and that perpetuates and then you end up with these segregated like or segmented groups of people that keep themselves intentionally isolated because they don't want to deal with the hybrids and they don't want to
Right.
deal with people other groups. And it just I think builds upon itself within those societies. I think this it's a really like understated theme of this of the
Yeah.
world, but like clearly it's extremely prevalent. And when we see someone interact with a hybrid that can speak for the first time, they are just like floored. And I
Right.
love it every time.
Yeah. Same here. Same here. So it really makes me think about all that stuff all the time. Every time it happens.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
so uh, I also gotta say kudos to Jeb for being the MVP of the episode, rescuing our boy Bobby
Yes,
so he could
yes.
get away. Like that's all I wrote. Bobby
Yeah,
able to get away. Thanks, big man. Like
yeah.
that was it.
Dude,
That was my
my
note.
notes my notes for that scene were, "Oh crud, Bobby's here. Jeff's not having them hurting Bobby. Thank God."
Yeah.
I love
So
that, man.
it is. I still can't believe how good that puppet of Bobby is. Like like once
This
again, every time I see it on the screen, it reminds me to the video. I think last season you sent me the video of how the behind the scenes of how they kind of move
Mhm,
and they puppet Bobby.
mhm.
Just really like it is those little things that I really appreciate more about the show that made me kind of overlook some of the other issues with the show and kind of keep
Yeah,
going.
yeah. Well, no, that's the thing, like, Bobby, I think this season has looked better than ever, right? Like, we got this
Yeah,
full animal kid who's on screen. It's like him and the elephant kid are, like, the 2, like, mostly, animal types,
yeah,
and I think, like, the animal kid is clearly just, like, a kid with a lot of makeup on, but Bobby is, like, a fully animatronic little robot dude, and I love it. It looks so good this season. Um Yeah, so I guess like the last thing we have to talk about here, I think, as far as the storyline is like Abbott's got this idea for this evergreen thing, right? And Zhang and him are going to they got rid of the other two factions to say, all right, we're gonna do this ourselves. That's an interesting thing. And I think the last piece that broke my heart this episode is Johnny lets Gus get away, right?
yeah,
And Abbott approaches him later and is like, "I can't believe my own brother would do this to me." And there's a line. He's like, "Why would you do that?" And Johnny says, "They're kids, Dougie. What would mom say if she was still alive?" And I was like, "Oh my god. Oh
yeah,
my god." Right? Like I think it was kind of hinted at the last episode or two of like he has this soft spot for these kids. But man, this episode is proof like he's not gonna be on board with them killing any more kids. I mean, obviously, he was on board for some. We cannot disregard that. But I think he's like, I see this kid. He can speak. I can't let them do it to him. You know?
yeah, yeah. I appreciate that uh they're kind of clearly drawing a line as to where Johnny won't follow his brother anymore, or at least things that he won't do for the cause. I guess you could call it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I appreciate that. I mean, and once again, the actor that plays Johnny, he's really good at that. Like that, me
Ugh.
looking like just every time he's trying to do something good while still, not his he's conflicted, and you can tell,
Yeah.
but I'm glad that it looks like I just want good things for for him for Johnny.
Dude, I know. I know. Like, there is a good heart inside that guy who has
Yeah.
been like pushed around by his brother. Yeah. Yeah. Um, so yeah, I guess like the thing that I love the ending of this episode, with
Hmm.
everybody kind of hearing the planes coming in, and we get a look at every single group, like Bear getting into the zoo finally, the planes overhead, uh, Sing was working and he hears the planes. The kids are sneaking about. Wendy looks up. Jep realizes what's coming next by looking up. Even in him and Gus, like amazing ending to the episode with the package that drops with the walkie-talkie that says delivery for General Abbott, and there's a walkie-talkie with the words knock knock written on it. I was like, hell yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that
We're
was
getting into the
good.
cool stuff now. We're getting into the end games and I'm loving it.
That was so good. It was such a like, seeing the reaction shots of people who may never have seen a plane fly or, like, the kids definitely haven't.
Right, right.
So, yeah, very, like, overall, very cool stuff. I love the ending, and I think they do a really good job at making sure that you wanna watch the next one right away,
Oh, yeah.
which for our
Yeah.
purposes is very hard. But
Yeah,
for people
yeah.
that for everyone that just went and binged the show, it's very rewarding to just kinda keep going, so, uh, yeah, I really enjoyed this episode. I think it had a lot of good stuff. Other Like I said, I'm kinda lost on the bear, and maybe this is for the what was not so good. The last thing I'll note, and this is just a coincidence, this episode was directed by Ciaran Foy, who also directed Sinister 2, a movie that I just watched this week. Like
What?
I rewatched Sinister 2 and I saw the name of the director, and then I watched the episode and I saw the name of the director and I was like, this dude was doing horror and back in 2015 and now he's doing this. Okay.
Okay,
So that was just weird. It was weird that it happened kind of like within the span of 24 hours that I saw two things by
for
the
sure.
same individual. So
Well, yeah, that's what a weird connection, but this is how
yeah,
we get 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, right? It's things like this.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I guess let's get into our final moments here. I guess like what was good? What were your highlights of this episode, Danny?
I think there was a moment where Gus just fully showed that he's done with Abbott. Like, there's nothing you can do to
Mhm.
me, and that was so like the little kid's so good. He's so good at that. Uh, I think this same actor is in Cocaine Bear too. If you want to go watch that,
Okay.
I noticed because I was putting together watching some old videos and I was like, wait, that's the kid from Sweet Tooth, and he's in Cocaine Bear. So he only does he only does animal based media, I guess.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
for his performances, but yeah, the kid's great. I think between him and the actor who plays Doctor Singh, they both really just bring it to the show.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I put what was good, I put Jep's backstory, even though it's not good, but, like, we finally get to kinda close the
Yeah,
book on that, and it's even more devastating, even knowing kinda I knew where this was going, it's even more
yeah,
devastating, like, to see it finally, like, on screen, like, that was such a jarring, shocking moment when those guys just threw the bags, like, good that's some good fun TV,
oh
as far as I'm concerned, um and I had just wrote Johnny in all caps. And then the one big thing, Danny, you pointed this out in your notes too, is like Wendy makes a point when she sees Gus. Like there was a thing that we didn't talk about it, but like Gus is just like totally destroyed that
yeah.
he had his antler cut off, and he's like, "Don't
Very
look at me,
very
don't look at me."
Phantom of the Opera. I felt like
Yeah.
right when he got his antler cut off. Yeah,
Yeah. And so, like, he goes and sits down, and Wendy goes to comfort him. And she says, I read about all the animals in the zoo, and the white-tailed deer, when they lose their antler, it usually grows back and it's stronger. And I was like, hell yeah. Like, these
yeah.
two, they're made to help each other, made to support each other. Like, that was such a great moment.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, man, I really digging it. Um, but yeah, I guess let's
I look forward to seeing a little antler start poking out
yeah,
from the little stump where they cut it off.
right. Right. Well, when they if and when they reveal the thing that I think they're gonna reveal, it's gonna be really fun. So, don't you worry,
I
Danny.
I can't wait to know everything that you know. And you know what's funny? That you know all the stuff, but like we don't know where they're gonna stop this season as far as the story goes, right? Because
Exactly.
they have announced that the third one will be the final season, which
Mhm,
could
mhm.
really cover a lot of the stuff that you're kind of waiting for. So it'll be interesting to see where we end up in the next few episodes.
Oh, yeah. I think I have a gut feeling as to where this season's gonna end given everything that they've built up with the show so far. But I have no idea where they could take another whole season of this show, right? That's
Yeah.
the thing. I know where the remaining amount of, like, literature lies, and I'm like, they must be digging on something really interesting. So, um Yeah, but let's talk about what was not so good, and then we can wrap this episode up. So, Danny, what didn't click for you this episode?
I hate to just put Bear here, but like I don't remember anything that Bear. I also don't like that. Are they trying to do like a love story for Bear with this kid that like we know that she was part of the animal army,
Mhm.
and then this kid's parents were killed by, or his dad was killed by the animal army, so like obviously that's gonna come up at some point. But yeah, all that stuff, I don't know, it feels kind of like bad tension building to me. Like I don't care for it.
You're telling me you didn't like to see those 2 20-ish something year old women fighting, and it was really awkward and poorly choreographed, and then the one girl knocks down the other girl and says, "Hey, bestie," and it's, like, really weird. You're telling me you didn't love that, Danny?
I almost wish they had stylized it and like done, because she's, I think she's tiger and she's bear, so like
She's yeah.
just stylize it and put the actual animals like anime fighting or something. It would. I
Yeah.
mean, you've already done other weird things. Might as well.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm kinda right there with you. I feel like the bad for me was the bear fighting this other woman was kinda awkward. I felt like the kid thing, the escape was kinda dorky, but, like, it was fun. I guess they're children, they need to be able to have fun.
I'm
Um,
gonna I'm gonna
but
clip
yeah.
out you saying the bear fighting a woman, just out of context.
Okay, okay. But yeah, otherwise, like, I felt like this episode kind of ruled. Like, I like the where it's going.
Yeah.
My thought is though that I kind of felt like this episode and the previous episode kind of could have been mashed together. Like, I feel like given the pacing of this season, it almost feels like it could have been a 6 episode season. Keep
Hmm.
all the episodes at an hour even, and it could be 6 episodes rather
Yeah.
than this kind of waffling between 44 and 51 minutes. Um, Maybe that's just me being nitpicky, but I do feel like you can get higher quality content with that. But that's, who knows? I don't know how Netflix's writing model works, but that's why the WGA is on strike.
They don't know either. They don't know either.
Yeah.
That's the real secret.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess like interesting episode, but yeah. Any last thoughts before we wrap here, Danny?
No, I'm excited, but I'm definitely also eager to stop talking because I don't like I said, I already watched the next one, so I don't want to get into it. So, but I'm
Well,
very excited to talk about it though.
yeah. Well, thank you for not spoiling. We'll get that recorded ASAP. But I guess to wrap us up here, you can always follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Discord, Goodreads, YouTube. You know where to find us. Everything's in the show notes. You can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/IRCB podcast to get early access to this show, the regular IRCB show, plus our episode post credits that we've been doing for our regular episodes, which are a lot of fun. The IRCB Candybar logo is done by TheSamDS. Music for this episode is Beautiful CS by Robert Farmer. I want to say thank you to Danny for recording me. Thank you out there for listening. If you got this far in the episode, you're a fantastic human being. And until next time, comics are good, and so are you.